Next story I wanted to talk about is about a guy named Jeff Jansen. I've talked about him a few times before, but this new clip just came out late February. In fact, I think it came out February 22nd, and that's a relevant date. The reason I list the date specifically is important. We'll see why in a second. If you're unfamiliar with who this is, I'll get into some of his past claims in a second. Just take a look at this latest clip, see what he had to say.
Hey guys, Jeff Jansen International. Really important piece of information came to me just a few days ago. The Lord's been telling me for several months now, watch February the 22nd, 2022, 2022, that something was going to take place. Pluto will be in its original seat of government. It hasn't been seen in the heavens for 248 years, which takes us back to 1776. It takes it right back to 1776. Pluto represents a personal change, or it represents a regime change.
Okay, hang on. So, wow, this is a lot. Let me try to catch up with what this guy is saying. If I understand correctly, he's saying Pluto hasn't been seen in 240-something years. I can't verify that scientifically. Maybe there's some basis to that, like it's made its orbit around the sun or something. I don't know, maybe. And now it's the most visible that it's been. I haven't heard a word about it, and I watch science news pretty closely. But okay, hey, I'll grant you that for the sake of argument. Let's go with it. What was that he said? Pluto represents change? Regime change?
A regime change, a transformation in government. Something is taking place in the heavens. Bob Jones would tell me, Jeff, if you're going to see what God's going to do in the earth, the heavens first declare the glory of God. The heavens declare what God is getting ready to release on the earth.
There was a space race back in the day, right? Back in the 60s, there was a space race. Who was going to get there first, Americans or the USSR? It was a big thing. And when the USSR won getting to space, I believe they were the first ones to space. We got to the moon first, but they got to space first. There's this Soviet cosmonaut, basically like a Soviet astronaut named Yuri Gagarin. And there's this story that he said, once he got to space, he said, I don't see any God up here. The reason that's important is because the USSR was considered communist, and they were also considered atheist. And the U.S. fought back against that with their capitalism and their Jesus. They were really, really serious about that stuff and laid into it. It was part of the war against the USSR. We're religious, you're not. We're capitalist, you're not. This is probably apocryphal. There's no way of proving that Yuri Gagarin actually said this, but there have been claims that when he got to space, he said, I don't see any God up here. That sentiment carried on throughout the course of the space race and in the intervening years. The sentiment that God isn't in space. God is in heaven, and heaven is above space. That's the impression that I was given when I was little. Everybody knows God isn't hanging out in space. They believe that God is hanging out in heaven above space. Okay, so the fact that Jeff Jansen seems to be conflating heaven and space here is a little weird on its own. But all right, let's just continue. I keep granting these things for the sake of argument, but they're getting stranger and stranger.
So Pluto, which means personal transformation, for the first time in
Pluto means personal transformation. Again, what is he even talking about?
For the first time in 248 years, this February the 22nd will be in its perfect birth seat like it was in 1776. That means something. Get ready. Things are happening.
I don't know what he means when he says its perfect birth seat. What is he talking about? Pluto will be in its perfect birth seat. It's easy to make prophecy after prophecy, especially if it's vague like this one is, because you just forget about it. You just never mention it again if it doesn't come true. And if it does come true, you point to it as a hit. That's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Ignore the misses and focus in on the hits. So this guy makes this vague waving prediction. Something important is going to happen, regime change or something, on February 22nd, 2022. Did that happen? No, it didn't. Russia invaded Ukraine on the 23rd, but again, they didn't actually change the regime. The president is still the president in Ukraine right now. So I really have no idea what he's talking about. Biden is still president. Everybody is still in their political government's place. This was a complete miss, but it's easy to think that it's a hit because around that time, some things were happening that could have pointed to possibly leading to regime change. But it didn't. It was a miss. It looks like a hit. This guy has a long history of doing that exact thing. I've been talking about him since at least early February 2021. Let's take a look at this clip. That's when this is from. I think this is the first clip I ever talked about with this guy. He was on Steve Schultz's channel to talk about the fact that Joe Biden was inaugurated and not Donald Trump. Listen to this.
There was inauguration. He put his hand on a Bible, or a supposed Bible. Someone said it's upside down. I don't know if it was, but they...
No, Biden did not put his hand on an upside down Bible. That's just nonsense propaganda to make people like you know, extremist Christians more afraid of Biden, for completely irrationally afraid.
If it was, but they put a hand on a Bible, said the right words, and now people say, okay, now he's our president. Now we have to pray for our president.
No, he's not our president. He is not, nor will he ever be.
Got bad news for you, bud. He is. And he has been since January of 2021. I know you don't like that. I know you're upset. That's just what it is, man.
Everybody knows there was a red tidal wave. There was a Red Sea moment, which is a red tidal wave. And quite frankly, America voted in Donald J. Trump. President Trump is president. We will be rejoicing in the streets by March, April, May, June.
That's kind of interesting. He was reasonably specific with that prediction, right? March, April, May, June? Well, guess what? He did actually go on to make specific predictions for days, like specific day and month predictions for each of those months. He made a specific prediction for March. March 4th is the one that he predicted. And as a matter of fact, here's a clip that I haven't covered before. Early August 2021. This is him explaining how he knows without a shadow of a doubt Donald Trump was actually inaugurated as the new president on March 4th, 2021.
God has not forgotten. There are many that are still standing on the premise of what's happening with President Trump. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact that he has already been inaugurated. I guess I can share that there was a general that was March the 4th.
Get ready for this QAnon conspiracy theory. That's what this is. He said March 4th is when he was inaugurated, right? I'll give you the premise behind this. The claim from QAnon is that after Reconstruction, after the Civil War ended, when the government reformed into a complete government, no longer the Union and the Confederacy, it actually formed into a corporation rather than the original real U.S. government. So they're saying everything that happened after the Union and the Confederacy rejoined after the Civil War is invalid because the U.S. government didn't make any of those laws, didn't pass any of those amendments, didn't elect any of those presidents, all of that stuff. So his claim is that anything that happened after the Civil War, after the last president was elected before the Civil War ended, anything that happened past that point is invalid. So that means the U.S. has only had 18 presidents. And the reason why March 4th is actually the inauguration day is because inauguration day used to be March 4th. It wasn't changed to January 20th until, I don't know, the 1900s. I don't remember the exact year. So the idea is that Donald Trump was going to be inaugurated in as the 19th president of the United States, not the 45th, not the 46th, but the 19th president of the United States on March 4th, 2021. That's the QAnon conspiracy theory. Keep listening.
There's a general that was March the 4th, 2021, March the 4th, where he was actually sworn in as the 19th president of the new reformed republic of the United States, going back to 1851, when everything was traded away in our nation. Don't have the time to get into that, but you know, I do want to say this, because people get so caught up with, oh, Jeff, you said by spring we'd be dancing in the streets. That's right, I did say.
He did, as a matter of fact. He said that in the last clip that we were watching.
We will be rejoicing in the streets by March, April, May, June. There's going to be an amazing turnaround. You just watch what happens. And the world will rejoice. Not just America, the world will rejoice because of this exposure. And so I'm telling you, that's going to take place. That I'm going down with the ship.
Sorry, man. It turns out you were completely and utterly wrong. Completely and totally wrong. And he seems to be trying to back up what we just listened to him say. He was utterly incorrect in this situation. How can you sit here with a straight face and look us in the eye, or look the camera in the eye, I guess, or whatever. How can you look the camera in the lens and say that you were correct when we know, without a shadow of a doubt, you were wrong? It blows my mind.
Because people get so caught up with, oh, Jeff, you said by spring we'd be dancing in the streets. That's right, I did say by spring we'd be dancing in the streets. I did say that President Trump would be president, and he is president. But you need to understand something as well. We need to understand that when the word of the Lord comes to a prophet.
Here's his justification. You guys ready for this? He's going to explain why he was wrong and why you should still believe him.
We need to understand that when the word of the Lord comes to a prophet, the prophet speaks the word of the Lord. Things can shift, not the goalpost. People say, well, you're shifting the goalpost. I'm not shifting the goalpost.
No, you're not shifting the goalpost. What's shifting then? Is the field shifting? Is the ball shifting? Are you shifting? What's shifting? Something is, because you made some very specific claims that didn't come true. God gave you information to give to us. God, from heaven, gave you secret information that he didn't give to anybody else, and he told you to deliver it to the rest of the world. And when you delivered that secret information, it turned out to be a lie. Guess what? The Bible warned about people like you, bud. They told us not to listen. They told us not to fear you, pay you no mind. The Bible specifically says to not listen to you anymore. What are we supposed to do? We supposed to follow what the Bible says and ignore you from here on out? Or are you the authority on this subject? Should we discard what the Bible has to say and listen to you instead? As a televangelist said recently, somebody lied. Who was it? Was it you or was it God? Just for fun, I found this old clip of Jeff Jansen. I don't know when this is from. It's in a 4:3 aspect ratio, so it's got to be from at least the 2000s, possibly from even earlier. It could be from as early as the 90s or the 80s. I don't think it's any later than the 80s. Couldn't be. It'd be in a different format if it was from the 70s, most likely. So, somewhere in the Satanic Panic era, anyways. Let's watch this clip. This is Jeff Jansen, old school Jeff Jansen, when he was trying to get his start in the field. Check it out.
2 years ago, I had a visitation from two angels. I was in a season of soaking and just really pressing in for the deep things of God. I went to bed about 10 o'clock in the evening, and I was awakened at 11:22 by two angels blowing silver trumpets in my face.
Oh, I bet this is totally 100% true. Yeah, absolutely. I have no reason to doubt you. Well, as it turns out, this guy has been lying for a living since at least the early 2000s, maybe as late as the 80s.
It was pretty incredible. There were two angels. One angel was on the left-hand side of me and was literally blowing a trumpet in my left ear. It was a long silver trumpet. On the other side of me, on the other side of the bed, there was another angel with a long silver trumpet blowing the trumpet in my right ear. What came out of the trumpet of the angel on my right was a wind.
You know, honestly, I think I could probably forgive this or overlook it or ignore it or whatever if this guy hadn't specifically said he woke up to this. A lot of televangelists and prophets of God, self-proclaimed prophets of God, cover their backs by saying, it was a dream, I was asleep. It was a closed vision, not an open vision, so I just closed my eyes and imagined this situation. Jeff Jansen isn't telling us that here. Jeff Jansen is telling us that he literally woke up and literally, in real life, two angels, one on each side, blowing trumpets in his ear. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't exaggeration. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't an analogy. This is real and literal, and 2 angels were there in my bedroom blowing trumpets in my ear. Conveniently, there's no evidence for it. You just got to take me at my word. Dude has been running this scam, I guess, since the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I don't know when he started this, but it's honestly really sad to see how many people buy it. He's not really a nobody. He started Global Fire Ministries, and obviously he's been in the business for a long time. People believe this stuff, and he is taking them down a QAnon path currently, actively, right now.